Bear cub sealed in a bouncy castle and took it to hospital. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun cast long shadows across Willowbrook Park as Maya Chen pushed her 18-month-old daughter's stroller along the winding path. Little Zara babbled contentedly, her chubby fingers wrapped around a worn teddy bear that never left her side. The park buzzed with the usual weekend energy, joggers weaving between dog walkers, families claiming picnic spots, and children's laughter echoing from the playground. Maya paused near the large oak tree where she always stopped to check her phone. 3 missed calls from work already, and it wasn't even 9 in the morning. She sighed, knowing the promotion she'd been chasing meant sacrificing more weekends like this one. Zara made a soft cooing sound, as if sensing her mother's stress. "Just 5 more minutes, sweetheart," Maya whispered, scrolling through her emails. "Mommy needs to handle this quickly." That's when she heard the first scream. Not the playful shriek of children at play, but something raw and terrified. Maya's head snapped up, her phone forgotten as she scanned the park. Other parents had stopped too, their conversations dying mid-sentence as they tried to locate the source of the sound. Near the far end of the park, where the forest met the manicured grass, a massive inflatable bouncy castle swayed in the morning breeze. It was part of the Henderson family reunion. Maya had seen them setting up earlier, 3 generations working together to create the perfect party atmosphere. But now, something was wrong. The bouncy castle jerked violently, as if something large was thrashing inside it. The bright red and yellow walls bulged outward in strange places, and the screaming continued. High-pitched yelps that made Maya's skin crawl. "What the hell?" she muttered, abandoning her emails and pushing Zara's stroller toward the commotion. As she got closer, Maya could see a group of teenagers clustered around the bouncy castle's entrance. Their faces were flushed with excitement, and they were laughing, actually laughing, at whatever was happening inside. One of them, a lanky boy with bleached hair, was recording everything on his phone. "Dude, this is going viral for sure," he was saying to his friends. "Look how crazy it's going." The bouncy castle shuddered again, and Maya realized with growing horror that the entrance was zipped shut. Whatever was inside couldn't get out. The screaming intensified, and now she could hear something else. A desperate scratching sound, like claws against plastic. "Oh my God," she breathed, breaking into a run. The stroller bounced over the uneven ground, and Zara began to whimper at the sudden urgency in her mother's movements. By the time Maya reached the scene, a small crowd had gathered. Most people stood at a safe distance, uncertain about what they were witnessing. A few adults were arguing with the teenagers, demanding they open the bouncy castle, but the kids just shrugged them off. "It's not hurting anything," the blond boy said, still filming. "It's just a stupid animal. It'll tire itself out eventually." Maya's blood ran cold. An animal, trapped inside that suffocating plastic prison, fighting for its life while these kids treated it like entertainment. She pushed through the crowd, leaving Zara's stroller with an elderly woman who had been watching the chaos unfold. "Please watch her," Maya said without thinking, her focus entirely on the bouncy castle. The structure lurched again, more violently this time. Through the translucent walls, Maya could see a dark shape tumbling and rolling, hitting the sides with sickening thuds. The animal's cries were becoming weaker, more desperate. "Open it!" Maya shouted at the teenagers. "Open it right now!" The blond boy looked at her with teenage arrogance. "Relax, lady. It's just having some fun." "Fun?" Maya's voice cracked. "You've trapped a living creature in there. It could suffocate." "It's fine," another teen chimed in, a girl with pink streaks in her hair. "Bears are tough, everyone knows that." Bears. Maya's heart nearly stopped. They had trapped a bear in the bouncy castle. Her mind raced through the implications, the danger to everyone in the park, the terror the animal must be experiencing, the sheer cruelty of what these kids had done for their social media content. Behind her, Zara began to cry. Not her usual fussy crying, but something different. A sound Maya had never heard from her daughter before. It was almost like she understood what was happening, like she could feel the trapped animal's fear. The elderly woman holding Zara's stroller looked troubled. "The baby," she said softly. "She's been acting strange ever since this started. Look at her hands." Maya turned to see Zara reaching toward the bouncy castle, her tiny fingers opening and closing as if trying to grasp something. Her tear-filled eyes were fixed on the swaying structure, and she was making soft, almost purring sounds between her sobs. "She's trying to help," the old woman whispered. "I've never seen anything like it." As if summoned by some invisible signal, more people began arriving. Parents pulled their children away from the area, while others pulled out their phones to record the spectacle. Maya felt sick watching them, treating this crisis like entertainment, just like the teenagers who had caused it. The bouncy castle gave another violent shake, and suddenly the sounds from inside changed. The desperate yelping became something else, weaker, more pitiful. The animal was exhausting itself, possibly dying, while everyone stood around watching. Maya made a decision that would change everything. She marched toward the zipped entrance, ignoring the teenagers' protests. "You can't go in there," the blond boy shouted. "It's dangerous." "More dangerous than leaving a terrified animal to suffocate," Maya shot back, her hands finding the zipper pull. But before she could open it, something extraordinary happened. Zara's crying stopped abruptly, replaced by a sound that made everyone freeze. A low melodic humming that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her 18-month-old throat should allow. The bouncy castle went completely still. Inside, the thrashing stopped. The desperate sounds faded to silence. Even the teenagers lowered their phones, sensing that something had shifted in ways they couldn't understand. Zara continued her strange humming, her eyes never leaving the bouncy castle. And from within that plastic prison, something responded. A soft whimper, almost like an answer to the baby's call. Maya's hand trembled on the zipper as she realized that her daughter, barely old enough to walk, had somehow communicated with whatever was trapped inside. The crowd around them held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The morning sun climbed higher, casting new shadows across the park where everything was about to change forever. Maya's fingers hesitated on the zipper as Zara's humming grew stronger, more purposeful. The sound seemed to vibrate through the air itself, creating an almost hypnotic atmosphere that made the gathered crowd sway slightly on their feet. Even the teenagers had gone quiet, their phones lowering as they stared at the baby in bewilderment. "What is she doing?" the pink-haired girl whispered, genuine fear creeping into her voice for the first time. Maya didn't answer because she didn't know. In all her 18 months as Zara's mother, she had never witnessed anything like this. Her daughter sat perfectly still in her stroller, her small body rigid with concentration, producing sounds that seemed impossible for someone so young. The humming had layers to it, harmonies that shouldn't exist in a single voice. The bouncy castle began to move again, but differently this time. Instead of the violent thrashing from before, it swayed gently, almost rhythmically, as if whatever was inside had found a strange kind of peace. Through the translucent walls, Maya could see the dark shape settling into a corner, no longer fighting against its prison. Dr. Samuel Reeves had been jogging his usual morning route when the commotion drew his attention. As the park's volunteer wildlife coordinator and a veterinarian with 30 years of experience, he recognized the signs of an animal in distress long before he reached the crowd. But as he pushed through the gathering people, what he saw defied everything he thought he knew about animal behavior. The baby's humming was unlike anything in his extensive knowledge of animal communication. It had the tonal qualities of whale song, mixed with something that reminded him of the low-frequency calls elephants used to communicate across vast distances. But this was coming from a human infant who shouldn't even have fully developed vocal cords yet. "Excuse me," Dr. Reeves said, approaching Maya with professional calm despite his racing heart. "I'm Dr. Reeves. I work with wildlife rehabilitation. What exactly happened here?" Maya turned to him with relief written across her face. Finally, someone who might actually help instead of just gawk. "These kids trapped some kind of bear in there," she said, gesturing toward the teenagers who were now backing away slowly. "My daughter, she's doing something. I don't understand what, but she's somehow calming it down." Dr. Reeves studied Zara with growing amazement. The child's eyes had taken on an almost translucent quality, as if she were seeing something beyond the physical world. Her humming continued in waves, each tone seeming to correspond with subtle movements from inside the bouncy castle. "How long has she been doing this?" he asked quietly. "Just started," Maya replied, "right when I was about to open the zipper. It's like she knew." A new voice cut through the crowd, harsh and panicked. "Charlie! Charlie, where are you?" Everyone turned to see a woman in her 50s pushing through the gathering people, her face streaked with tears and her clothes torn from running through underbrush. Her wild eyes scanned the crowd desperately until they landed on the bouncy castle. "Oh God, no," she breathed. "No, no, no." Dr. Reeves recognized her immediately. Ellen Morrison ran the local wildlife sanctuary, and she'd been searching for something, or someone, all morning. The pieces began clicking into place in his mind. "Ellen," he called out, "what's missing from the sanctuary?" Ellen's face crumpled as she looked at the bouncy castle. "Charlie. He's just a baby, 8 months old. His mother was killed by poachers last month and we've been hand-raising him. He got out of his enclosure early this morning. I've been tracking him for hours." The crowd murmured uneasily as they realized they weren't dealing with a wild, dangerous bear, but an orphaned cub who was probably more terrified than aggressive. The teenagers who had trapped him looked significantly less smug now, the reality of their actions beginning to sink in. But Zara's humming suddenly changed pitch, becoming more urgent. Inside the bouncy castle, Charlie began to move again, not thrashing but pressing himself against the walls as if trying to get closer to the source of the sound. Through the plastic, they could see him pawing at the barrier, his movements almost desperate. "He's responding to her," Dr. Reeves whispered in amazement. "I've never seen anything like this." Ellen wiped her eyes and moved closer to the stroller. "Charlie's been depressed since losing his mother. He won't eat properly, won't play, barely responds to any of us at the sanctuary. But listen to him now." Sure enough, soft whimpering sounds were coming from inside the bouncy castle. Not cries of distress, but something that sounded almost like contentment. Charlie was talking back to Zara in his own language. Maya felt a chill run down her spine as she watched her daughter. Zara's tiny hands had begun moving in precise patterns, as if she were conducting an invisible orchestra. The humming grew more complex, weaving melodies that seemed to tell a story only Charlie could understand. "We need to get him out of there," Ellen said urgently. "But carefully. If we startle him now, After what these kids put him through, he could go into shock. The blonde teenager who had been filming stepped forward, his earlier bravado completely gone. "Look, we didn't know he was a baby. We thought it would be funny, like a prank video or whatever." "A prank?" Ellen's voice was deadly quiet. "You traumatized an orphaned animal for entertainment?" "We'll unzip it," the pink-haired girl said quickly. "Right now, we're sorry." But as she reached for the zipper, Zara's humming stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening, and Charlie immediately began to whimper in distress. The baby looked directly at the girl approaching the bouncy castle and shook her head. A clear, deliberate no that made everyone freeze. "She doesn't want us to open it yet," Maya said softly, her voice filled with wonder. "She's trying to tell us something." Dr. Reeves pulled out his phone and began recording, not for social media, but for documentation. What he was witnessing could change scientific understanding of human-animal communication forever. "Maya, has Zara ever shown any unusual behavior around animals before?" Maya thought back through the months of Zara's short life. "She's always been calm around dogs and cats. More than calm, they seem drawn to her. Last week at the zoo, all the animals came to the fence when she walked by. I thought it was just coincidence." "It's not coincidence," Ellen said quietly. "Some people are born with a gift. Indigenous cultures have known about it for thousands of years. Humans who can speak the old language, the one we all shared before we forgot how to listen." Zara resumed her humming, but this time it was different, gentler, more like a lullaby. Inside the bouncy castle, Charlie settled down completely, his breathing visible through the plastic as it became slow and regular. The cub was falling asleep to the baby's song. "Incredible," Dr. Reeves murmured. "She's helping him process the trauma. Bears in distress often need to sleep it off, but they can't do it while in fight-or-flight mode. She's giving him permission to rest." The crowd had grown larger, but people were keeping their distance now, sensing they were witnessing something sacred. Parents held their children close, whispering explanations they didn't fully understand themselves. Even the teenagers had put away their phones, watching with expressions that mixed guilt with amazement. Maya knelt beside Zara's stroller, studying her daughter's face. The baby's features had taken on an almost otherworldly serenity, as if she were channeling something far older than her 18 months of life. "How is this possible?" Maya whispered. Ellen approached carefully, not wanting to disturb whatever was happening between Zara and Charlie. "My grandmother was Lakota. She used to tell stories about children born with the old sight, the ability to see and speak to all living things. She said they were bridges between worlds, meant to heal the ancient wounds between humans and nature." "That's just folklore," Maya said automatically, but her voice lacked conviction. The evidence was right in front of her. Her baby daughter somehow communicating with a traumatized bear cub in ways that defied scientific explanation. Dr. Reeves looked up from his phone, his eyes bright with possibility. "Maybe folklore and science aren't as far apart as we think. We're learning new things about consciousness and communication every day. Maybe Zara is accessing something we've forgotten how to use." Inside the bouncy castle, Charlie had curled into a tight ball, his breathing now completely relaxed. Zara's humming had become so soft it was barely audible, like a mother singing her child to sleep. The connection between them was palpable. Invisible threads of understanding that transcended species barriers. But then Maya noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. Other animals were arriving. First, a family of squirrels descended from the oak trees, chattering softly as they approached the bouncy castle. Then came the park's resident cats, strays and outdoor pets who normally gave each other wide berth, but now sat together peacefully near Zara's stroller. A few dogs pulled their owners closer, whining not in distress but in what sounded almost like recognition. "They can hear her too?" Ellen breathed. "All of them. She's calling to every living thing in the area." The realization sent ripples of unease through the crowd. This wasn't just about a baby and a bear cub anymore. Something much larger was happening. Something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the natural world and humanity's place in it. Maya reached out to touch Zara's hand, and the moment their skin made contact, she gasped. For just an instant, she could feel what her daughter was feeling, a vast network of consciousness that connected every living thing in the park. The sensation was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. Zara looked up at her mother for the first time since the humming began, and Maya saw something in those young eyes that hadn't been there before. Knowledge, purpose, and underneath it all, a sadness that seemed too deep for someone so young to carry. "Mama," Zara said clearly, her first real word, spoken not to her mother but to every creature within earshot. And somehow they all understood. The effect was immediate and profound. Every animal that had gathered around the bouncy castle responded at once. The squirrels chittered in what sounded like conversation. The cats began purring in unison, and the dogs sat perfectly still, their tails wagging slowly in rhythm with some unheard beat. Even Charlie stirred inside his plastic prison, making soft cooing sounds that Ellen had never heard from him before. Maya's hands trembled as she stared at her daughter. "Zara? Baby, what's happening to you?" But before Zara could respond, if she even could in any language Maya would understand, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the morning air. Someone had called the authorities, and now the complex situation was about to become even more complicated. "Oh no," Ellen muttered. "If animal control gets here and sees this scene, they'll want to tranquilize Charlie immediately. In his current state, that could kill him." Dr. Reeves pocketed his phone and took charge with the calm authority of someone used to crisis situations. "We need to get him out before they arrive. But we have to do it Zara's way. She's the only one who can keep him calm." The crowd parted as 2 police cars and an animal control van pulled into the park's main lot. Maya felt panic rising in her chest. How could she possibly explain what was happening here? How could anyone explain a baby who spoke to animals in languages that shouldn't exist? "Maya," Ellen said urgently, "I need you to trust me. There's something you need to know about your daughter, but we don't have time for the full explanation right now. Can you carry her closer to the bouncy castle?" "Absolutely not," Maya replied instinctively. "I'm not putting my baby near a wild animal." "He's not wild anymore," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "Look at him." Through the translucent walls, Charlie was visible in perfect detail. The cub was sitting upright now, his small paws pressed against the plastic, as he watched Zara with an expression that could only be described as adoration. His earlier panic had been completely replaced by calm attention, as if he were a student waiting for his teacher's next lesson. Zara began humming again, but this melody was different, more urgent, with undertones that made everyone's skin prickle. She was trying to tell them something, and the message was becoming clearer to those who were learning to listen. "She wants us to move her closer," Ellen translated, though she wasn't entirely sure how she knew. "She's saying Charlie needs to see her to stay calm when we open the castle." The elderly woman who had been holding Zara's stroller spoke up for the first time. "I'll push her. I've seen enough in my 87 years to know when something is bigger than our understanding. This child has a purpose." Maya looked into the woman's kind eyes and saw a lifetime of wisdom. "What's your name?" "Rose Fletcher." I was a nurse for 50 years before I retired. I've seen miracles, dear. I know one when I see it. The sirens were getting closer. Dr. Reeves could see the officers and animal control personnel unloading their equipment in the distance. "We have maybe 3 minutes," he said. Maya made a decision that went against every protective instinct she had. "Okay, but I'm coming with her." Rose began pushing Zara's stroller toward the bouncy castle, while Maya walked alongside, her heart hammering. As they got closer, Charlie's excitement became visible. The cub pressed himself against the wall nearest to Zara, making sounds that were almost like words, at least to those who were beginning to understand the new language being spoken in the park that morning. The teenagers who had caused this crisis were still there, but they had changed completely. The blonde boy, whose name Maya learned was Devin, was crying openly as he watched the scene unfold. "I had no idea," he kept repeating. "I thought animals were I didn't know they could feel like this." His friend with the pink hair, Chloe, was staring at Zara with something approaching reverence. "She's like something out of a fairy tale, but real." Dr. Reeves knelt beside the bouncy castle's entrance, his hands on the zipper. "Zara, can you keep Charlie calm while I open this?" The baby looked directly at him and nodded, another impossibly mature gesture from someone who should barely be able to focus her eyes. Her humming intensified, and Charlie moved away from the entrance, understanding somehow that the scary humans were finally going to set him free. The zipper opened with a soft hiss of escaping air. Dr. Reeves peered inside carefully, his years of experience with traumatized animals guiding his movements. Charlie was huddled in the far corner, but he wasn't cowering. He was waiting. "Come on, little guy," Dr. Reeves said softly. "Nobody's going to hurt you anymore." But Charlie didn't move toward the vet. Instead, he looked directly at Zara and made a sound that stopped everyone's breath. A perfect imitation of her humming, pitched higher to match his smaller vocal cords, but unmistakably the same melody she had been singing. "Impossible," Ellen whispered. "Bears don't mimic human sounds like that," Zara responded immediately, humming back to Charlie in what was clearly a conversation. The cub began moving then, not toward Dr. Reeves, but directly toward the baby. He crawled out of the bouncy castle with careful, deliberate movements, never taking his eyes off Zara's face. The gathering crowd held its collective breath as Charlie approached the stroller. Maya's every instinct screamed at her to grab her daughter and run, but something deeper kept her frozen in place. This felt like a moment that had been waiting to happen long before any of them were born. Charlie stopped just inches from Zara's stroller. Up close, he was smaller than Maya had expected, still clearly a baby himself, with soft fur and eyes that held too much sadness for his age. Slowly, carefully, he raised one small paw toward Zara's outstretched hand. The moment their skin touched, everything changed. A pulse of energy rippled outward from the point of contact, visible for just an instant, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Every animal in the immediate area, the squirrels, cats, dogs, and even birds in the nearby trees, fell completely silent. The humans felt it too, a strange tugging sensation in their chests, as if something important had just shifted in the fabric of reality itself. Zara and Charlie stared into each other's eyes, and Maya could swear she saw understanding pass between them that went beyond anything words could convey. The baby began making soft cooing sounds while Charlie responded with gentle, chittering noises. They were having a conversation in a language that had no name, but somehow felt familiar to everyone listening. "My God," Dr. Reeves breathed, still recording everything. "They're bonding. I've seen mother animals adopt orphaned young from other species, but I've never seen a human infant form this kind of connection with a wild animal." Ellen was crying now, but not from sadness. Charlie hasn't shown this kind of trust or affection since his mother died. This little girl is healing him in ways we never could. The sound of boots on grass announced the arrival of the authorities. 3 police officers and 2 animal control specialists approached the scene with professional caution, clearly expecting to find chaos. Instead, they found a tableau that none of their training had prepared them for. A baby and a bear cub holding hands while surrounded by a circle of peaceful animals and awestruck humans. Officer Martinez, the senior policeman on scene, stopped in his tracks. "What exactly am I looking at here?" Dr. Reeves stood slowly, never taking his eyes off Zara and Charlie. Something that's going to change everything we thought we knew about human-animal relationships. The animal control specialist, a woman named Sarah Chen, approached with a tranquilizer gun raised. "Everyone step back. We need to secure the bear immediately." "No," Ellen shouted, moving to block Sarah's line of sight. "You can't tranquilize him now. Look at his vitals, his breathing, his posture, his responses. He's completely calm. The tranquilizer could disrupt whatever's happening here." Sarah lowered her weapon slightly, confusion clear on her face. "Ma'am, that's a wild bear. Even a young one can be extremely dangerous." "He's not wild," Ellen replied. "He's from my sanctuary. And right now, he's safer than he's been since his mother died." Officer Martinez studied the scene more carefully. He'd been a cop for 20 years, but he'd never encountered anything like this. The bear cub was clearly relaxed, almost sleepy, and the baby showed no fear whatsoever. Around them, other animals maintained their vigil with an organization that seemed almost purposeful. "Ah, Dr. Reeves," Officer Martinez said finally, "you're the wildlife expert here. What's your professional assessment?" Dr. Reeves chose his words carefully. "I believe we're witnessing a breakthrough in interspecies communication. This child appears to have a natural ability to connect with animals in ways that could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness and empathy." "That's not possible," Sarah Chen said flatly. "Animals don't form emotional bonds with humans that quickly, especially traumatized ones." As if in response to her skepticism, Charlie looked up at the animal control officer and made a sound that was unmistakably protective. A small growl that positioned himself between Sarah and Zara. The message was clear. He saw the baby as his to protect. Zara responded by patting Charlie's head gently while making soothing sounds. The cub immediately relaxed again, but his eyes remained fixed on the adult humans with their threatening equipment. Rose Fletcher, who had been quietly observing from beside the stroller, spoke with the authority of her 8 decades. "Young lady," she said to Sarah, "I've lived long enough to see things that science couldn't explain at the time but made perfect sense later. Maybe, instead of trying to control this situation, you should try to understand it." Maya found her voice again, though it came out shaky with emotion. "My daughter spoke her first word 20 minutes ago, to him." She gestured toward Charlie. Not mama or dada, like other babies. She looked at a traumatized wild animal and said, "Mama," like she was trying to comfort him. The implications hung in the air like morning mist. If Zara could somehow sense Charlie's need for maternal comfort, what else could she understand about the inner lives of animals? What other connections might be possible? Dr. Reeves was thinking along the same lines. "Officer Martinez, I'd like to propose something unusual. Instead of removing Charlie from this situation, what if we allowed it to continue under controlled circumstances? Ellen's sanctuary is properly licensed, and I'm qualified to monitor the interaction." "Absolutely not," Sarah Chen interrupted. "There are protocols for dealing with human-wildlife encounters. We can't just ignore them because something unusual is happening." but Officer Martinez was studying Zara and Charlie with growing fascination. "How unusual are we talking about, Doctor?" "Reeves." "Unprecedented," the vet replied honestly. "If what I'm documenting here is real, it could change how we approach conservation, animal rehabilitation, and our understanding of consciousness itself." Ellen stepped forward with the desperation of someone who had spent her life trying to heal wounded animals. "Charlie has been refusing food and showing signs of severe depression since losing his mother. In the past 30 minutes, I've seen more positive response from him than in the entire 3 months since his rescue. Whatever this child is doing, it's working." Maya looked down at her daughter, who was now stroking Charlie's fur with the gentle precision of someone who inherently understood how to provide comfort. The cub had closed his eyes and was making contented rumbling sounds that reminded her of a cat's purr. "What if we tried something?" Maya heard herself saying. "What if we took both of them to the sanctuary? Together, just to see what happens?" The suggestion hung in the air like a bridge between two worlds, the one where humans and animals existed in separate spheres, and another where the boundaries might be more fluid than anyone had imagined. Officer Martinez looked at his colleagues, then at the growing crowd of witnesses, then at the undeniable evidence of connection between a human baby and an orphaned bear cub. "This is way above my pay grade," he said finally, "but I'm not about to break up something that looks like it's healing trauma for both of them." Sarah Chen started to protest, but Dr. Reeves cut her off. "I'll take full medical responsibility for both the child and the cub. Ellen's sanctuary has medical facilities and I can monitor them continuously." Ellen nodded eagerly. "We have everything we need, and if this connection can help Charlie, maybe it can help other animals too." Maya felt the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. Everything in her logical mind said this was crazy, taking her baby to spend time with a wild animal based on some inexplicable ability that shouldn't exist. But looking at Zara's face, seeing the profound contentment there as she continued her gentle interaction with Charlie, Maya realized that maybe logic wasn't the right tool for understanding what was happening. "Okay," she said quietly, "but I'm not leaving her side." Zara looked up at her mother and smiled, a radiant expression that seemed to contain all the wisdom of ages. Then she turned back to Charlie and resumed their wordless conversation. Two babies from different worlds finding solace in their shared understanding of what it meant to need love and protection. The morning sun continued climbing, but everyone gathered in Willowbrook Park knew they were no longer living in the same world they had woken up in. Something had shifted, something that would ripple outward from this moment like stones thrown into still water. And at the center of it all, a human child and a bear cub held hands while the universe quietly rearranged itself around their impossible connection. The drive to Ellen's sanctuary took 45 minutes, but it felt like a journey through time itself. Maya sat in the back of Dr. Reeves's SUV, watching her daughter sleep peacefully in her car seat, while Charlie dozed in a specially designed transport carrier beside her. Every few minutes, one would stir and make soft sounds to the other, maintaining their connection even in sleep. Ellen followed in her own vehicle with Officer Martinez, who had insisted on accompanying them to document whatever was about to unfold. Sarah Chen had reluctantly agreed to let the situation proceed after Dr. Reeves signed extensive liability waivers, but her parting words had been ominous. "When this goes wrong, don't say I didn't warn you." The Willowbrook Wildlife Sanctuary sat on 200 acres of protected forest land, home to dozens of rescued animals who couldn't be returned to the wild. As they pulled through the main gate, Maya felt a strange sensation wash over her, as if the very air here was different, charged with possibilities that defied explanation. "Welcome to my life's work," Ellen said as they parked near the main rehabilitation building. "We've been helping wounded animals for 30 years, but I have a feeling today is going to teach us more than all those years combined." Dr. Reeves carefully lifted Charlie's carrier while Maya gathered Zara, who was beginning to wake up. The moment the baby's eyes opened, she immediately looked toward Charlie's carrier and made a soft questioning sound. "Yes, sweetheart," Maya found herself saying. "Your friend is here too." The words felt strange coming out of her mouth. Since when did she refer to a bear cub as her daughter's friend? But looking at Zara's relieved expression, Maya realized that's exactly what Charlie had become. Ellen led them into a spacious room that served as both medical facility and temporary housing for recovering animals. Sunlight streamed through large windows, and the space felt more like a comfortable living room than a clinical environment. "I designed this room for animals who need extra emotional support during their recovery," she explained. "It seemed like the right place for whatever's about to happen." Dr. Reeves set Charlie's carrier on the floor and carefully opened it. The cub emerged slowly, sniffing the air cautiously as he took in his new surroundings. His posture was alert but not frightened, a remarkable change from the panicked animal they'd rescued from the Bouncy castle just hours earlier. Maya placed Zara on a soft blanket in the center of the room, and immediately both baby and cub began moving toward each other. But something was different now. Other animals in the sanctuary were responding to their presence. From somewhere in the building came a chorus of sounds, chirping, chattering, and calling that seemed to be getting closer. Ellen's eyes widened as she recognized the voices of animals who rarely made noise during the day. "That's impossible," she murmured. "Most of them should be sleeping right now." The sounds grew louder, and then Maya saw something that made her question everything she thought she knew about reality. Animals were gathering outside the windows, not just the sanctuary's residents, but wild creatures from the surrounding forest. Deer stood alongside foxes, rabbits sat peacefully next to hawks perched on low branches, and a family of raccoons pressed their small hands against the glass as if trying to get closer to whatever was happening inside. "Dr. Reeves," Officer Martinez said quietly, "are you getting this on camera?" "Every second," the veterinarian replied, though his voice was filled with wonder rather than scientific detachment. "I've never seen behavior like this. It's as if they're all responding to some kind of signal." Zara had reached Charlie and was gently stroking his fur while making the same humming sounds that had calmed him at the park. But now other harmonies were joining in, animal voices from inside and outside the building creating a symphony that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the sanctuary. Ellen sank into a nearby chair, overwhelmed by what she was witnessing. "In all my years working with animals, I've never seen them organized like this. It's like they're gathering for some kind of ceremony." That's when the first miracle happened. A door at the far end of the room opened, and a wolf limped in. Ellen gasped. This was Thunder, a magnificent gray wolf who had been shot by poachers 6 months ago. The bullet had damaged his spine, and despite Ellen's best efforts, Thunder had been unable to walk properly since his arrival. The proud animal had become increasingly withdrawn, refusing interaction with both humans and other animals. But now Thunder was moving with purpose, his limp barely noticeable as he approached Zara and Charlie. The wolf's golden eyes were fixed on the baby with an intensity that should have been frightening. But Maya felt no fear. Instead, she sensed recognition, as if Thunder saw something in her daughter that he had been waiting for. Zara looked up at the approaching wolf and extended one tiny hand toward him. "Friend," she said clearly, her second word, spoken with the same impossible wisdom as her first. Thunder stopped just out of reach and lowered his massive head, a gesture of respect that Ellen had never seen him make to any human. Slowly, carefully, Zara reached out and touched the wolf's nose with her fingertip. The effect was immediate and visible. Thunder's posture straightened, his limp disappeared entirely, and his eyes brightened with a vitality that had been missing since his injury. He took several steps backward and then forward again, testing his renewed mobility with growing amazement. "That's medically impossible," Dr. Reeves whispered, but his camera never stopped recording. "Spinal damage doesn't just heal like that." Ellen was crying again, but these were tears of joy mixed with disbelief. Thunder hasn't been able to walk normally in months. The veterinary specialists said the damage was permanent. But Zara wasn't finished. She looked around the room with those impossibly wise eyes and spoke a third word: hurt. As if summoned by her call, more animals began entering the room. Ellen recognized each one, residents of the sanctuary who had been carrying physical or emotional wounds that traditional treatment couldn't fully heal. There was Whisper, a barn owl with a damaged wing that had never properly mended. Shadow, a black bear cub who had been found near starvation and had never regained normal appetite or energy. Luna, a deer who had been hit by a car and left with a permanent limp. One by one, they approached Zara with the same careful reverence Thunder had shown. And one by one, something extraordinary happened when the baby touched them. Whisper's wing straightened and spread to its full magnificent span. Shadow's dull coat became lustrous again, and his movements regained the playful energy appropriate to a young bear. Luna walked with perfect grace for the first time since her accident. "This is impossible," Officer Martinez kept repeating, though he never stopped filming with his phone. "People are never going to believe this." Maya watched in stunned silence as her 18-month-old daughter somehow healed injuries that veterinary science had deemed permanent. But what struck her most was how natural it all seemed to Zara. The baby showed no surprise at what she was doing, no strain or effort. She simply touched each animal with gentle love, and their bodies remembered what it felt like to be whole. Charlie had been watching everything with fascination, and now he moved closer to Zara and made a sound that everyone in the room somehow understood as a question. "Me too?" Zara looked at the bear cub with infinite tenderness and placed both her tiny hands on either side of his small head. For a moment, nothing visible happened. But then Charlie's eyes, which had held the deep sadness of an orphan since his mother's death, began to brighten with something that looked like hope. "She's not healing his body," Ellen realized. "She's healing his heart." The transformation in Charlie was subtle but profound. The tension he had carried since losing his mother melted away, replaced by the natural curiosity and playfulness appropriate to a young bear. He nuzzled Zara's cheek and made a sound that was unmistakably laughter, the first joyful noise Ellen had heard from him since his rescue. Dr. Reeves lowered his camera, his scientific mind struggling to process what he had documented. "I have recordings of what just happened, but I'm not sure anyone will believe them. We're looking at healing abilities that challenge everything we know about biology and medicine." But the miracles weren't over. Outside the windows, the gathering of wild animals had grown even larger. Maya could see creatures that should have been natural enemies sitting peacefully side by side, predators and prey united by their response to whatever energy Zara was radiating. And then she heard something that made her heart skip a beat. Human voices approaching the building. Not the sanctuary staff, but strangers. Several different voices, all calling out in languages Maya didn't recognize. Ellen heard them too and looked puzzled. "We don't have any visitors scheduled today. Who could that be?" Officer Martinez moved to the window and peered out toward the parking area. There are people coming up the main road on foot. Looks like they might have walked here from quite a distance." The voices grew closer, and Maya began to make out individual words in what sounded like Native American languages, mixed with others she couldn't identify. There was an urgency to the calls, but not panic, more like excitement or recognition. "They're looking for something," Ellen said, moving toward the door. "Or someone." Before anyone could respond, the door to the rehabilitation room opened and an elderly Native American man entered. His weathered face was streaked with tears, and his eyes immediately found Zara among the gathering of animals. "The child of two worlds," he said in accented but clear English. "The prophecies were true. She has come at last." Behind him, other people began filing into the room, men and women of various ages and ethnicities, all wearing expressions of wonder and reverence as they looked at Zara. Maya counted at least a dozen people, and she could hear more voices outside. "Who are you?" Maya asked, instinctively moving closer to her daughter. The elderly man stepped forward with the dignity of someone accustomed to respect. "I am Joseph Crowfeather, keeper of the old stories for the Lakota people. These others are keepers from many tribes, Cherokee, Hopi, Navajo, and nations whose names you would not recognize. We have been waiting for this child for 7 generations." Ellen looked between the newcomers and Zara, pieces of a puzzle beginning to form in her mind. "The stories my grandmother told me, about children born with the old sight. You know about this?" Joseph nodded gravely. "Every indigenous culture has the prophecies. A child would be born who could speak the first language, the one all living things understood before humans forgot how to listen. She would come when the world was most in need of healing, when the barriers between human and animal had become so strong that both were dying from the separation." Dr. Reeves looked around the room full of healing animals and felt the truth of those words settling into his bones. "That's exactly what we're seeing, isn't it? She's not just communicating with them, she's reconnecting them to something they lost." A Cherokee woman stepped forward, her long gray hair braided with feathers and beads. "I am Elena Riversong. I have driven 3 days from Oklahoma because the spirits told me the bridge child had awakened. Our prophecies speak of a time when one would come who could heal the ancient wound between human and animal nations." Maya felt overwhelmed by the implications of what these people were saying. "You're talking about my baby like she's some kind of messiah." "Not a messiah," Joseph corrected gently. "A translator. A bridge between worlds that have forgotten how to speak to each other. Look around you. See what she has already accomplished in just 1 day." Maya did look around, and what she saw took her breath away. The room was filled with animals who had been broken and were now whole. Creatures who should have been afraid of humans but instead sat peacefully among strangers. Outside the windows, the impossible gathering of natural enemies continued to maintain their vigil. And at the center of it all sat Zara, still holding Charlie while other animals pressed close to her, all of them basking in some invisible warmth that radiated from the baby's presence. "What does this mean for her?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What kind of life is she going to have?" Elena Riversong approached carefully and knelt beside Zara. The baby looked up at her with those wise eyes and smiled, making soft sounds that Elena seemed to understand. "She is not burdened by this gift," Elena translated. "She is fulfilled by it. This is what she was born to do, not to live a normal human life, but to help heal the relationship between all living things." Officer Martinez, who had been quietly documenting everything, finally spoke up. "With all due respect to your traditions, we're talking about a toddler here. She needs to go to school, make friends, have normal experiences." Joseph Crow. Feather looked at him with compassion. What is normal for a child who can heal with a touch and speak to the souls of animals? What school could teach her what she already knows? What friends could understand her the way these creatures do? As if to emphasize his point, Charlie nuzzled closer to Zara and made a contented sound that seemed to vibrate through the room. The other animals responded with their own calls of agreement, a chorus of different species, all expressing the same sentiment of belonging and peace. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as she began to understand the magnitude of what was happening. Her daughter wasn't just an unusual child. She was the fulfillment of ancient prophecies, the answer to prayers that had been whispered for generations by people who remembered what the world could be like when all living things existed in harmony. But with that understanding came a crushing weight of responsibility. How do you raise a child who's been prophesied by multiple cultures? How do you protect someone whose very existence challenges the fundamental assumptions of modern civilization? Ellen must have sensed her distress because she moved to Maya's side and spoke quietly. You don't have to figure this out alone. The sanctuary can be her home base, a place where she can be herself among those who understand her gift. Dr. Reeves nodded in agreement. And I can document everything, create a scientific record that might help the world understand what she represents. This could change how we approach conservation, animal welfare, even our understanding of consciousness itself. Joseph Crow Feather approached Maya with the gentle authority of an elder. The prophecies do not say the bridge child must carry her burden alone. They speak of a community, humans and animals working together to heal the world. You are part of that community now, whether you chose it or not. Maya looked down at Zara, who was contentedly playing with Charlie while surrounded by animals who had been healed by her touch. Despite the overwhelming nature of everything she was learning, Maya felt a strange sense of rightness about it all. This wasn't the life she had planned for her daughter, but watching Zara's radiant happiness, she realized it might be exactly the life her daughter was meant to live. "What happens now?" Maya asked. Elena Riversong smiled, the expression transforming her weathered face. "Now we begin the real work. The child has awakened, but she is still very young. She will need guidance, protection, and above all, she will need to learn to use her gifts wisely." Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting golden light through the windows and illuminating the extraordinary scene within. Animals of all kinds continued to maintain their peaceful vigil, while humans from different worlds tried to understand what they had witnessed. And in the center of it all, a baby and a bear cub played together, their laughter mixing with the sounds of healing and hope that filled the air like promises of a better world to come. As the golden hour light streamed through the windows, something extraordinary began to happen. The animals who had been healed by Zara's touch started to glow with a soft, warm light that seemed to emanate from within their very souls. It wasn't visible light exactly, but something deeper, a radiance that could be felt rather than seen, a warmth that spoke of wholeness and joy. Charlie was the first to notice it, making a sound of wonder as he looked at his own paws, then at Zara, then back at the other animals. The light was strongest in him, perhaps because his healing had been the most profound, not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. Maya gasped as she realized what she was seeing. They're actually glowing. Joseph Crow Feather nodded solemnly. The old stories speak of this too. When the bridge child awakens her full power, those she has touched carry her light with them always. They become beacons of healing wherever they go. Dr. Reeves lowered his camera, understanding that what he was witnessing had moved beyond anything that could be documented or explained by conventional means. The animals at the windows, he said softly. "They're responding to that light, aren't they?" Elena Riversong smiled as she watched a cardinal land on the windowsill, its bright red feathers seeming to shimmer in response to the energy filling the room. They can sense the healing. Word is spreading through the animal kingdom faster than any human communication could travel. Outside, the gathering had grown beyond anything Maya could have imagined. The forest around the sanctuary teemed with creatures great and small, all drawn by something they couldn't name but desperately needed. Bears emerged from deep woods, eagles circled overhead, and even animals that should have been hibernating stirred from their winter sleep to witness this moment. But it was what happened next that changed everything. Zara stood up from where she had been playing with Charlie, her small legs steady with a confidence that seemed impossible for an 18-month-old. She walked to the center of the room, and as she did, the light emanating from the healed animals began to flow toward her, creating streams of golden radiance that connected every living thing in the space. "Mama," she said, looking directly at Maya with eyes that held the wisdom of ages. "All better now." And Maya understood. Zara wasn't just talking about the animals she had healed today. She was talking about something much larger. A fundamental wound in the relationship between humans and the natural world that had been festering for centuries. The baby raised her tiny hands toward the ceiling, and the streams of light flowing from the animals began to spiral upward, creating a column of pure energy that seemed to extend beyond the physical building into the sky itself. Through the windows, Maya could see that every animal in the surrounding forest was turning toward the sanctuary, their eyes reflecting the same golden light. "She's calling them all," Ellen whispered in amazement. "Every creature within miles." Joseph Crowfeather began to chant in his native language, his voice joining with others as the tribal elders recognized what was happening. This was the moment their prophecies had pointed toward for generations, when the Bridge Child would send out her call to all living things and begin the great healing. Officer Martinez, who had been documenting everything, suddenly found himself unable to focus on his camera. Instead, he was overwhelmed by a feeling he had never experienced before, a deep, profound connection to every living thing around him. The sensation was so powerful it brought tears to his eyes. "I can feel them," he said wonderingly. "All of them. Every animal, every bird, every creature out there. I can feel what they feel." Dr. Reeves was experiencing the same thing, his scientific mind struggling to process the flood of awareness that was washing over him. "It's like she's opened a door in our consciousness. We're all connected to the same network she's been tapping into." The light continued to spiral upward from Zara's raised hands, and now it was visible even to those outside the building. Through the windows, Maya could see people from the nearby town beginning to arrive. Families who had left their dinners cooling on the table. Teenagers who had abandoned their video games. Elderly people who hadn't left their homes in years. All of them drawn by something they couldn't explain but couldn't resist. Charlie moved to stand beside Zara, his small form also beginning to emit the same golden radiance. Other animals joined them: Thunder the wolf, Whisper the owl, Shadow the young bear, Luna the deer, each one glowing with the light of perfect healing, creating a circle of communion that transcended species boundaries. Maya found herself walking toward her daughter, no longer afraid of what she was witnessing, but filled instead with overwhelming pride and love. This was her baby, her miracle child, fulfilling a destiny that had been written in the stars long before either of them was born. As Maya knelt beside Zara, the baby reached up and touched her mother's face with one glowing hand. Instantly, Maya felt every fear, every doubt, every worry she had ever carried simply dissolve away. In its place came a profound sense of purpose and belonging that made her understand, finally, why she had been chosen to be this child's mother. The healing isn't just for animals, she realized aloud. It's for everyone, everything. Elena River's song approached and placed gentle hands on both Maya and Zara. The bridge child cannot heal the world alone. She needs her human family, her animal family, and all the families yet to come. The great work begins now. The column of light began to pulse with a rhythm that matched the heartbeat of every living thing in the sanctuary. Through the walls, through the earth, through the very air itself, that healing pulse spread outward in ever-widening circles. Animals throughout the forest felt their old injuries fade away. Trees that had been damaged by pollution began to straighten and flourish. Even the earth itself seemed to exhale with relief as ancient toxins were neutralized by the pure energy flowing from the baby's touch. In the nearby town, people found themselves drawn outside to stare at the golden light rising from the sanctuary. Children stopped crying. Elderly people felt their pain ease, and those who had been carrying emotional wounds for years suddenly found themselves able to breathe freely for the first time in decades. Dr. Reeves managed to refocus his camera long enough to capture the moment when Zara lowered her hands and smiled at everyone gathered around her. The column of light didn't disappear. Instead, it settled into everything it had touched, becoming a permanent part of the fabric of existence in that place. "Perfect," Zara said clearly, her fourth word spoken with the satisfaction of someone who had completed a task that was always meant to be hers. Charlie nuzzled against her, making contented sounds that every person in the room could now understand as expressions of love and gratitude. The other animals pressed closer, creating a living mandala of interspecies harmony with the baby at its center. Joseph Crowfeather wiped tears from his weathered cheeks as he looked around the transformed space. 7 generations of waiting, and now the prophecy is fulfilled, the bridge is built, and the great healing has begun. Maya gathered Zara into her arms, marveling at how natural it felt to hold a child who had just changed the fundamental nature of reality. "What happens now?" she asked. Ellen smiled as she watched Thunder playfully chase his own tail for the first time since his injury, his joy infectious among all the other animals. "Now we live in the world she's made possible. A world where humans and animals remember how to be family." Officer Martinez looked around at the dozens of people who had been drawn to witness this moment. Scientists and spiritual leaders, farmers and city dwellers, children and elders, all united by the experience of profound healing. "This story's going to spread, isn't it? People are going to want to understand what happened here." "Let them come," Elna Riversong said with quiet confidence. "The bridge child's work is just beginning. Every person who experiences this healing will carry it back to their own communities. The light spreads by sharing, not by hiding." As if in response to her words, Zara looked up at her mother and spoke her final word of the day. "Home." But she wasn't looking at Maya when she said it. She was looking around the room at the incredible family that had formed around her. Humans and animals, wild creatures and domesticated ones, all bound together by the golden threads of healing and love that now connected their hearts. Maya understood. This sanctuary, surrounded by the forest full of creatures who had felt Zara's call, with its community of people dedicated to healing the ancient wounds between species, this was home, not just for Zara, but for all of them who had been touched by her gift. The sun set completely as Maya settled into a comfortable chair with Zara in her lap, Charlie curled up at their feet, and Thunder resting his great head against her knee. Around them, the most impossible family in the world, prepared to spend their first night together in a world that had been fundamentally transformed by the love of a baby who spoke the language that all living things had been waiting centuries to hear again. Outside, the forest hummed with contentment as creatures who had never known peace found themselves able to rest without fear. In the town below, families gathered around dinner tables found themselves talking to each other with a kindness and understanding that felt like coming home after a long journey. And in the sanctuary, as Zara drifted off to sleep in her mother's arms, Charlie's gentle breathing harmonizing with the contented sounds of dozens of other animals, Maya finally understood what the tribal elders had meant about prophecy and purpose. Some children are born to grow up and change the world through their actions, but Zara had been born to change them